You've seen him on Good Morning Football. He also writes for NFL Spin Zone across a multitude of platforms. Russell Baxter, follow him on Twitter at BaxFootballGuru for all of your football needs on Twitter. Russell, how you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. How are you?
Doing very well. So before we get into some of the different teams, I want to first ask you, what were your impressions of the NFL trade deadline with all the flurry of moves? I expected maybe one or two trades, but I didn't expect that many moves before the trade deadline.
I don't even know if I expected one or two trades. It's traditionally been a quiet time. Usually the major trades take place even before the season starts. How many times in March do you see trades announced, major trades, before, and we have to wait till free agency to get they become official? Because this is a salary cap league and so on, and because you're dealing with so many different people, it's harder to trade later in the season. But boy, that just flew in the face of everything. We had, from Marcel Darius to Jimmy Garoppolo to Kelvin Benjamin to Jay Ajayi. Take your pick. It was really, it was quite stunning, and now we'll just have to see if it was an anomaly or it's something we're going to see in the future.
What was the trade that stood out the most to you that you looked at and said that was a great move by said team?
I think Kelvin Benjamin. I don't know what all the particulars down in Carolina, but I know he's back with a coach, not his position coach, but a coach in Sean McDermott that knows him very well. Brandon Bean. There's a number of other Carolina Panthers on that team as well. Mike Tolbert comes to mind. So it was surprising because there's a guy who was a first-round draft choice not too long ago. Now, I know he missed one whole year, their Super Bowl year, with the knee injury, but, he gives them, think about it. You can think about it this way, too. And if memory serves me, he was the first-round class of 2014, Josh, which was also the fourth overall pick in the draft when the Bills took Sammy Watkins. Mm-hmm. So, in essence, they don't have... Buffalo, what's interesting about Buffalo, albeit they got their butts kicked the other night and didn't look, I don't want to say unprepared, but giving up 194 yards rushing isn't what a top-notch defense is supposed to do. But you think about what they've done in the offseason with free agency and trades. They've managed to keep their heads above water in terms of the AFC East race, and at the same time accumulate some stuff down the road for next year. Listen, they lost the other day. They wind up splitting with the Jets the other day. But keep this in mind about the Buffalo Bills in December. Their last 5 games, they play the Patriots and Dolphins 4 times.
So they have a chance to either make up ground for themselves or totally fall apart.
Well, what they have is the opportunity to decide who's going to win the AFC East. Be it them, be it Miami, be it New England, and who knows what? Listen, I'm not going to dismiss the Jets at 4-5, the team that some people thought was going to go 0-16. 9 weeks into the season, you're 4 spots wrong.
Right. By the way, for those who are wondering out there, you mentioned the 2014 draft. There were 5 wide receivers taken in the first round, and 3 of those 5 are now with different teams: Sammy Watkins, Brandon Cooks, and Kelvin Benjamin. So definitely.
All trades, by the way, all trades.
All trades, exactly.
All trades. So, nobody got cut. Obviously, none of them would have been eligible for free agency.
Right.
Okay, that's soon into their careers, but it wasn't like any of them were cut. But, you also think you got to keep in mind, too, about these first-round players is whether that team wants to make a commitment for the 5th year. I think one of the smarter things that the NFL and the NFLPA agreed to with the collective bargaining agreement is no more standard 5-year contracts for the first-round picks. They're 4-year contracts with an option. And, the team has the option of whether they want to renew for a 5th year. Sometimes that has hurt a team and sometimes it's helped them. But, I don't think it's any coincidence that all of them were dealt because maybe a team didn't. Or in the case of the Saints, the Saints were so defensive strapped, and they had been for a number of years. They needed to get more defensive players. And by the way, Marshawn Lattimore has been one of the better rookie corners in the league for the Saints this year.
Sure. Talk with Russell Baxter. You can follow him on Twitter at BaxFootballGuru for all of your NFL needs. In our backyard, Russell, we have the team with the best record in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles. They also lead the NFL in point differential at plus 76 coming into this weekend. What has been the most impressive aspect for you with this Eagles team?
Well, I think the most impressive thing I just heard you say was the fact that the Eagles are in your backyard, which must make it incredibly convenient to watch the game.
Oh, it's extremely loud, too.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. What's impressive? Listen, the Eagles are where they are. And this is going to sound odd because of what just happened with Jason Peters. They are where they are because of their play in the offensive and defensive lines. Carson Wentz has improved. He's got more weapons around him. Now having Jay Ajayi, who can be a true workhorse. Okay, LeGarrette Blount is a pounder, but LeGarrette Blount's got some mileage on him. Okay, Jay Ajayi's got fresh legs and capable of 25, 30 carries a game if that's what the Eagles want to do. And LeGarrette Blount can be the finisher. In some ways, almost, you go back to, there's so many different examples, it's not even worth mentioning. Go back to the Steelers in 2008. Willie Parker took over the starting job. Jerome Bettis became the finisher. Okay? This is kind of in that same mode. Jay Ajayi, who, whatever the relationship with him with Adam Gase, I don't know what it was, but obviously it wasn't very good for them to take a Pro Bowl running back in his second year and deal him like that. But it's the play in the lines, and so improved are they on the defensive lines as they were able to absorb Fletcher Cox being out because of Timmy Jernigan being there. Now it remains to be seen if Fletcher Cox is going to be out again for different reasons. Because of the Joe Staley incident and so on. I think that certainly bears watching, but. The Eagles still have some shortcomings at cornerback. They've addressed it as much as they could, but they, to me, are playing better. And by the way, I'll throw in the special teams as well. Their special teams, I think, have been excellent. Good. Jake Elliott has been, it's not just the kicking, everything they've done. They have played the most complete football of any team in the league. I mean, Pittsburgh's got its pluses. New England's got its pluses. Seattle has its pluses. But no one right now is as balanced as Philadelphia in terms of the three phases.
Interesting, Russell, because I mentioned this earlier about the fact that I look at the other teams in the NFC and I find things wrong with them. I look at a team like Seattle and they're a team that just can't win very much away from home. You look at a team like New Orleans, you're always waiting for the shoe to drop, despite the fact that they've played well this year. You look at the Vikings; they're basically doing all this with a backup quarterback. The Cowboys' secondary is atrocious compared to what it was last year. So it seems like every team that would be competitive with the Eagles, even a team like the Rams or the Panthers, both have winning records, but both of them have certain aspects of their teams that make you say, I don't know if they can do it. Is there a true contender to the Eagles in the NFC? And if so, who is it?
Well, I don't think I don't put Philadelphia there quite yet. They're playing better than anyone else, but I don't think there's a best team in the league this year, Josh. I mean, no one has shown it to me to be the quote-unquote best team. I just think Philadelphia is executing better than anyone. And by the way, they have trips to Seattle and a trip to the Los Angeles Rams, so we're going to find out head-to-head what those teams can do.
Right.
The Eagles are sitting at 7-1. That's great. Seattle and the Rams are both 5-2. So beating the Eagles and somehow getting tied with them, all of a sudden the playoff game is in Seattle instead of Philadelphia or Los Angeles. I'd be concerned if I were any team and had to play the Seahawks in the playoffs up in Seattle. So, but I mean, listen, the Falcons have been unpredictable. The Packers are shorthanded, not just with Aaron Rodgers, but their defense still doesn't look like it's any better. The fact that Philly went to Carolina is a big thing. Their test is going to be how their defensive line goes up against that Cowboys offensive line, regardless of who's running the football.
Russell, you mentioned Seattle and the Rams. I look at the Seahawks and the Rams. I think they're both on track to make the playoffs. But what's been even more impressive about each team is the fact that you see two teams that were not afraid to make the small improvements. It was the Rams who added Andrew Whitworth, who I think has stabilized that offensive line. It was the Seahawks who were willing to go out and make the trade for Dwayne Brown, and I applaud them for not being like some teams and being desperate to make the flashy moves, but they've made the moves that are necessary to make themselves better.
Well, no doubt about it. And there's another move that happened a while ago with Seattle that it kind of goes under the radar a little bit. Let's not forget that they have Sheldon Richardson on their defensive line. And once Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill are a little healthier, that defensive line's going to be pretty scary.
And remember, they only gave up basically Jermaine Kearse for him. It's not like they depleted themselves to get him.
Talk about a trade that worked out both for good. Jermaine Kearse has been a major asset to the Jets.
Yep.
He's played very, very well for them, and it shows what a quality receiver he was. Always came up big in the playoffs. I'm very impressed with I'm impressed with the entire AFC East, to be honest with you. Although I'm still trying to figure out how Miami has been shut out twice this year and is still above 500.
Yeah, you and me both. Speaking of the Jets, I can't believe I'm saying this, but how about the Jets? I mean, how about Todd Bowles? It seems like as soon as they got rid of Brandon Marshall and Sheldon Richardson, it seems like this team has come together. They have 4 wins on the year. Josh McCown has played solid. The defense with all the young players has played well. Talk about the Jets. This is a team a lot of people assumed was going to be one of the worst teams in the league, but instead they're in almost every game.
Yeah, well, they have been. They shook off a shaky start, okay, which sounds repetitive, and it is. They lose. Remember, defensively, they've got talent, and yet in the first 2 games, they gave up 190 yards rushing to the Buffalo Bills. They improved dramatically a week later when they played the Raiders. They only gave up 180 yards rushing. But since then, they've been more the aggressors. They knocked off Jacksonville. They knocked off Miami. They knocked off the Bills the other day. Again, this isn't college football where, who you beat puts any credence to your record and so on. But, they have, for a team that people were, A, accusing of tanking, B, at least one prominent radio person said they were going to go 0-16. C, people who wanted them to tank thought it'd be a good idea because they could improve themselves in the draft and get a quarterback. They've shut up a lot of people. They have really shut up a lot of people. And, when they get back from the vacation, they go down to Tampa and play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What happens if the Jets are 5-5 after 10 games after being 5-11 last year? Okay, I mean, you got to give Todd Bowles. You certainly have to give Todd Bowles some credit. Wouldn't even be surprised if he got some Coach of the Year votes. I'm not saying he would win it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got some votes that way.
Absolutely. Russell, one more for you before I let you go, and I always appreciate the time. As always, I encourage folks go out on Twitter, follow him at Bax Football Guru for all of your NFL football information and needs. The AFC South has just been turned on its head multiple times this year. Andrew Luck's now on the IR. It's a shame what happened to Deshaun Watson. I love watching that young man play in college and the NFL. It's a shame with a non-contact knee injury. But now it looks like this is going to be between the Jaguars and the Titans. And both those teams are coming from very different situations into this battle for the AFC South.
Well, I'm not ready to dismiss Houston yet, okay? I know what Deshaun Watson has meant to them. I also know they don't have J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless, so they have really taken their blows, okay? But it's not like they're 1-6. It's not like they're 2-6, which the Colts are. The Colts are looking. They're one of the 3 worst teams in the league, based on talent and based on performance. But you're right. Tennessee and Jacksonville, both 4-3, do come in it from different directions. Tennessee at 4-3 has been a bit of a disappointment, even though they're above 500. Jacksonville in 4-3 has been a surprise. And listen, they've stumbled along the way, but 33 sacks in 7 games. They put a 10 spot on the board twice this year. Once against the Colts and once against the Texans. They have, 16 takeaways more than last year. You know who deserves a lot of credit? and follow me for 1 second. I'll say it as fast as possible. Go back to 2008 when Tony Sparano was named the head coach of the Miami Dolphins after a 1-15 season. Do you remember who was in the front office with him? Some guy named Bill Parcells.
Yep.
Well, let's fast forward to this year. Doug Marrone takes over a team full-time, 11 or more losses 6 years in a row. Come off a 3-13 season. He's the head coach, but guess who's in the front office? Some guy who's very punctual named Tom Coughlin.
Yep.
Don't think Tom Coughlin's influence hasn't been felt throughout this organization. And, again, they've laid some eggs. I think that it's interesting. When they blew out Houston and then got rolled by Tennessee a week later, I think people semi-dismissed them. But that defense is pretty scary. And remember, they added Marcel Darius.
Yeah. I like what I've seen from the Jaguars defense. I personally don't. I'm not sure if I'm ready to buy into Blake Bortles yet, but Leonard Fournette has definitely been a ray of light on that offense for sure. Russell, I always appreciate the time as always. You can follow him on Twitter, folks, at Bax Football Guru. Highly recommend his follow. You can see him sometimes on Good Morning Football on the NFL Network, and he also writes for NFL Spin Zone and other platforms as well. He tweets it all out at Bax Football Guru. Russell, appreciate the time as always.
All right. Have a great weekend.